Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm Eli Nyberger. I'm director of the Ann Arbor District Library. Thank you all for coming to the Book Festival and to our Fifth Avenue Press 2023 launch event. We have a very full program, so we're going to jump right into it. But first, I'd like to introduce two of the members of the Fifth Avenue Press team, AADL librarians, Erin Helmrich and Sarah Peltier, who's around here somewhere. They'll both be up here at the time. So Erin, please take it away.
Hello. Hi, everybody. So this is so exciting to have this event happen at Bookfest because we have such a full room and we're really excited to be celebrating all the books that have come out since last year. And as we said, we have a tight schedule. So I am not going to talk a lot because I know you want to hear from our amazing artists and illustrators and writers. So our first book we're going to start with, we're just going to dive in, is A Fine Loaf of Bread by Terry and Leslie Butler. And you're going to get to see the illustrations and hear a little bit about the technique and then, of course, get signatures afterward. But I know you don't want to completely ruin the surprise at the end of the book. So anyway, come on up and please give a warm welcome to Terry and Leslie Butler.
Okay.
I feel like we should stand like this so that we look like our portrait.
Thank you so much for coming out to support the new authors. We can attest to the struggle it can be to make a new book. It's not very easy a lot of times. So our book is called A Fine Loaf of Bread. I'm Terry. This is my wife, Leslie.
Hello.
The book I wrote about in the year 2000, and it kind of sat on a shelf for about 20 years. And during the pandemic, I pulled it out and thought, I should do something with this. And so kind of it evolved into, submitting it for publication. Leslie and I both worked at a bakery up in Leland, Michigan, one of the first sourdough bakeries in Michigan,
The next pages.
where I was a head baker up there for several years. And that was kind of the inspiration for the book. It was owned by a guy who used to be a newscaster in Detroit, and his name was Bob Pizor. And he was a kind of a bigger-than-life character, and we could still hear his booming voice going through the bakery, talking about how fantastic his bread was.
Okay, yep.
So the book is illustrated with linocuts, which is a very old way of making an image. It's a relief printing method. You carve into a plate, you roll it up with ink, and then you put paper on and rub the paper down. So this is a very kind of old way of making an image, and we thought it would go kind of with the time frame theme of the book, kind of like 1800s kind of thing, possibly in a Celtic land. So Leslie is now going to read the book for you.
Well, I'm going to read part of it, not the whole thing. We don't have a lot of time for that, so I'll just jump right in. On a fine autumn morning, just after dawn, Robert woke up and let out a great yawn. He thought, I can't spend the day lounging around, for today is my trip to the bakery in town. It wasn't some pastry he wanted to buy, not fluffy white bread or a muffin or pie. His goal was a loaf, whole grain, crusty and thick, expertly baked in an oven of brick. He marched through the fields with a quick bouncing gait. To get the bread freshest, he couldn't be late. The smell of the bakery soon sped him along, and while walking, he whistled his favorite song. He stepped in the bakery and greeted the crew. They said, the bread's warm, and there's one just for you. He asked for the biggest loaf up on the shelf. Robert said, it's a beauty. It's all for myself. Stepping out of the shop, he began his trek home, but then he stumbled over a large cobblestone. Flying out of his hands with a bounce at his feet, the bread began rolling along down the street. My bread, shouted Robert, who started a chase, but the bread had momentum and picked up its pace. It rolled through the marketplace full steam ahead and bounced off the top of the fruit vendor's head. It skipped off an awning and then on the fly dropped into the dairyman's cart going by. Stop, stop, yelled Robert, my bread is on board. But the driver was late, so his pleas were ignored. As the cart sped along, the rough streets on a tear, a jolt from the rut launched the bread in the air. And after completing a triple backflip, it raced down the street and continued its trip. Some kids playing games in the square, with surprise, saw a big loaf of bread being chased rolling by. Can we play too? They all squealed with delight as they skillfully aided the bread on its flight. The bread led the group on a cross-country dash, tasty and wholesome and fast as a flash. Some children grew weary, and then the whole bunch. Still Robert pursued his round runaway lunch. Bounding along past each field and farmstead, the Loaf was on course for the river ahead. Oh no, not the river, poor Robert did think. If I don't stop it soon, it will drop in the drink. But the bread was too fast and seemed set for a soak till it rolled up the trunk of an old gnarly oak. Then out on a branch, just as fast as could go, it stopped while the river roared on down below. At last, panted Robert with a wheeze and a gasp, the bread's on a break, and it's well in my grasp. He climbed out the limb, and just as quick as you please, and reached to give his prized loaf a good squeeze. As he heard the clim crack, he squeaked out, "Why me?" And then, splash, he plunged down from the heights of the tree. Shooting the rapids with the bread held up high, he was bounced, bumped, and battered, but kept the loaf dry. Soggy and tired, but with bread still in hand, he dragged himself out at last to dry land. Placing the bread on a large rock nearby, he sat down to rest and let his clothes dry. Just then something swooped down, large and coal-black. A raven in flight grabbed his loaf for a snack. Not again, Robert sighed as he watched the bread soar. Well, I've chased it this far, guess I'll chase it some more. While the bird fluttered on, Robert followed below, but the bread was so heavy the raven let go. The bread dropped right down in the field of a farm, and Rob soon arrived to keep it from harm. It landed smack dab on a large stack of hay. He thought, I'll just grab it and be on my way. But a bull who was munching there dislodged the bread, and it slid down and stuck on the horn on its head. Nice bull, Robert said in his gentlest tone. I'd like my bread, please, and I'll leave you alone. But the bull seemed a little annoyed on that day, and Robert soon thought he should be on his way. Leaping a fence to get free from harm, the bread went airborne and wound up in his arms. Relieved that an end finally came to its flight, he wandered on home with his trophy held tight. What an ordeal, Robert did mutter, as he put out some jam, some cheese, and some butter. As he sat down to enjoy his noon meal, something was missing, he started to feel. With a lovely large loaf of bread such as this, to eat by myself would be quite amiss. He invited some guests to partake in the feast. There was plenty for every adult, child, and beast. Just then a commotion was heard from outside, and out on the road from the window they spied Robert's close neighbor, Mr. Walter Nuthatch, pursuing the best of his prized pumpkin patch. The gang streamed outside and was ready for fun. It seemed that a new food adventure had begun. Tally-ho, Robert roared with a smile on his face, and they all charged forth on the next wild food chase. All right, thank you.
Thank you. These illustrations deserve to be poured over, so you definitely want to talk to Terry and Leslie about their process. And I know also still have some prints for sale, so you'd be happy if people are interested. This next two books, I will admit, I'm going to rush through a little bit because they're the author has actually relocated to Oklahoma in the time since the last couple of books came out. And then Nicole Ray, the amazing artwork for Bookfest is Nicole Ray's creation. And so she is giving a very good deal. These are the last two, the Farmers Market book and the library book, which I'm going to show you really quickly. She's selling all four of them, which includes Mathi Botanical Gardens and the Natural History Museum for $75. And the great thing about these, again, pour over these illustrations, go and talk to Nicole. They just really make our town look as awesome as it really is. There's some really amazing things to pour over about activities at the farmers market all the way through the seasons. I don't know if anyone else has seen the movie Notting Hill as many times as I have, but and also kind of a little memorial for Full Moon there coming up. This, at the end of Notting Hill, or actually it's not at the end, but as he's walking through, if you see the seasons going by, there's the inspiration for this final picture because it shows all four seasons as they are walking past. So farmers market, all the beautiful photos, things that are in season, and then the library book, which of course we're all really partial to. We're really excited about the library book. Take a look. Every time we love seeing different depictions of our branches. In each of these books, this one is an opossum family visiting the library, and all of our branches are shown, the trees at Traverwood, Lightwall, Story Time, and all of our branches are on display. So I also love the Secret Lab one is amazing. That is a staff member using the saw, so it's not going to be any toddlers or anything. And those of you who played the summer game, anybody raise your hand? That is an active code, and it's a pretty generous one, totally possum. So make sure to go say hi to Nicole and get her to sign these beautiful books, because it's a really gorgeous collection. So warm welcome for Ann Arbor Adventures. And I know Nicole's also hoping to have some stickers and some fun things so that we can put things on water bottles. Okay, so our next book is by somebody who used to work at the library for a few years and then retired after getting all of our storytellers up to snuff to be just as awesome as she is. Anyway, Chico Choose a Tale by Laura Pershing Rayner with illustrations by Sona Evedikian. And I don't think is Sona here. We had invited her. Okay. So Laura, please come on up and please share Chico Choose a Tale.
I'm going to read the story and then just have a couple words to tell you. Chico, the tiny donkey, woke up hungry one morning, but he didn't want fresh hay or grass for breakfast. He wiggled his long ears, tipped his nose up to the sky, and brayed, "I'm hungry for a story." Chico knew just where to go to find a story, but he also knew that stories are best when surrounded by friends. So Chico walked through the meadow and down the path to the river, looking for a friend. He found Kate, the golden retriever, digging a hole just because. "Hey, Kate, you want to go to story time at the library? I'm headed there now." "Well, I don't know. This hole is just getting nice and deep. Will there be cuddling at story time? When I was a pup, I used to cuddle with my mama." "Well, Kate, this time you can cuddle with a friend at story time," said Chico. "Sounds cozy. Let's go find Rosemary." So Chico and Kate ran up the path to the barnyard to find Rosemary the goat. Rosemary was chomping on a bunch of long grass. "Hi, Rosemary. I know that you love stories. Do you want to come with us to story time?" "Oh, yeah. Maybe they'll tell my superhero story. You know, the one about the biggest billy goat that sent the troll flying through the air. Let's see if Blue wants to join, too." They all climbed on top of the hill. They found Blue the horse lifting his head toward the sun, and Chico asked, "Blue, are you hungry for a story today?" "Hey, yeah! Do you think there might be stomping at story time, too?" "Well, there's always stomping and dancing at story time," said Chico. "Maybe Cleo will want to go," said Blue. So Chico and Kate and Rosemary and Blue headed down the hill toward the house. There was Cleo the cat curled up by the front gate. "Hi, Cleo. Want to join us? We're going to the library for story time." I don't know. I just found this warm, sunny spot. Unless, of course, there will be mouse stories. Those are always so delicious." "Well, I'm not sure," said Chico, "but the stories are always tasty." "Uh-oh, is that a storm cloud?" asked Cleo. "I guess I might as well come with you if my sunny spot is gone." The animals marched down the front walk and onto the road to the library. Thunder rumbled, the rain poured down, a bolt of lightning frightened Rosemary, who butted Cleo, who screeched and jumped on Blue's back, and Blue leaped over Kate. Chico simply rushed happily ahead. When they entered the library, they were a soggy parade. They arrived just as Miss JoJo was starting her story. When they settled down, Miss JoJo told a very dramatic story. Chico was so excited he started chewing on Cleo's tail. Cleo pulled away with a loud meow and walked off to sit next to Blue. After the story, Miss Jojo got everyone moving. Chico looked around at his friends. Everyone was stomping and dancing and singing. Chico saw the sun come out from behind a cloud and shine through the window, and he felt full and wet and happy. New stories with old friends. Thank you. Josie Barnes Parker, do you mind standing up for one moment, please? This story's for you. As many of you know, Josie was our director for 20 years, and the idea of creating and funding this book came from the Ladies Library Association as a heartfelt tribute to Josie. The lovely illustrations came from Sonia Avedikian. The title and concept came from our current director, Eli Nyberger. This was truly a team effort for a natural-born storyteller. Josie, we know you recognize all the characters. These are all Josie's animals in the story. This one's for you. Thank you.
So that was really amazing. And sadly, those books are trapped on a truck. Debbie Taylor, our next author, actually tried to wrestle drivers yesterday. She got them on her cell phone, and I gave them tracking numbers, and they tried really hard, but the darn things were already on the truck for Monday delivery. So that is a proof, so don't criticize it too much, because there's some gutter issues. Okay, so our next picture book is Debbie Taylor. Step It Up, The French Dukes, which is a truly local story. We are really excited that this book is finally coming out. Unfortunately, Debbie and Chris can't sign afterward. We are going to have a massive separate celebration for the French Dukes. Next year is the 200th anniversary of the library, or of the city, and the library is planning a lot of really great things. And so we're hoping to have a separate event, the French Dukes doing a full performance and everything. So Chris is here as well, the illustrator. Debbie previously published with us with Over in Motown and has published many other things. We are very lucky to have her amongst us. Please give a warm welcome to Debbie Taylor.
You just push through. Okay, thanks so much. Oh, boy. Guess I'll take this off, right? Okay. Thank you so much, Erin. And again, another hand for Laura and for Josie Parker, please. Thank you. Wonderful. So I guess I'll read this first, and then I'll read the book. So thank you, Fifth Avenue Press, for bringing this book to publication. Erin, Amanda, Emily, and the library research team, thank you so much. I want to acknowledge the French Dukes, the Duquettes, their families, and the drill teams that were part of this community, including the El Toras, the Angels, the Continentals, and the emerging new team, the Salt of the Earth, a project of Samaritan Way of Michigan. Thank you, Brown Chapel AME Church. I know you're here somewhere, okay, for your prayers and support. My writing group members for your input and edits, and always thank you to my family here on earth and above, and my fellow author and amazing husband, Charles Taylor. So this book was inspired by a conversation with Kenneth J. Mitchell, a member of the French Dukes. During a dinner party, he shared that he'd been a member of a precision drill team. One conversation led to another, and after 2 focus groups and conversations with many people, the book began to take shape. Unfortunately, Kenny passed away in 2019 before seeing the final draft, but members of his family are here today. Would you please stand? Renee? There's already a documentary about the French Dukes in the works, but it's my sincere hope that this book is the seed for more books, artwork, podcast, poetry, and so on. Kudos to my fellow authors and illustrators here today, and to the future authors and illustrators in the audience. And last but certainly not least, I would like to present Chris Marshall, our talented illustrator. Okay. Step it up, the French Dukes. Are any French Dukes here? Yes. Yeah. Thank you. All righty. The drill team waved to the. I'm sorry? Okay. Mosey on up, yes. Okay. All righty. Sidestep, sidestep, box, box, box. The commander of the French Dukes Precision Drill Team shouted orders to the squad marching past the farmers market. Shoppers watched the men wearing starched shirts, white berets, and white gloves. When they reached City Hall, marchers stepped smartly and turned on their heels. Kenny's big brother, Ted, was the tallest man in his column. His eyes sparkled, but his usual grin was replaced by a stern look. Kenny mirrored the final steps of the routine. To the right, to the right. Kenny stood at attention and saluted. The drill team waved to the cheering crowd. So when can I be a French Duke? Asked Kenny. Well, you have to try out next Saturday like everyone else, said Ted. Learn the steps, practice the drills. Kenny spun around. Huh, that's easy. But also be kind, responsible, and respectful to everyone, said Ted. That means doing your chores, keeping tidy, and staying away from the guys who pitch pennies and break windows. And remember, French Dukes don't give up, they step up. I will, said Kenny. One day soon I'll be picking up my uniform from Sam's clothing store. During the next few days, Kenny rehearsed all 30 of the drill routines. On Monday, after making his bed, Kenny raced to the driveway to rehearse By the Winds, swaying his arms like a windmill. His mother called, Kenny, your bed is so messy, it looks like you're still in it. On Tuesday night, he practiced the four corners, saluting in every direction until moonlight shined through the window. On Wednesday, he pretended the kitchen broom was a flagpole. He swung it right and he swung it left. The handle smacked right into a pitcher on the counter. Crash! On Thursday, his grandmother chuckled as he gobbled down his dessert. He hurried outside to practice the razzle-dazzle, wiggling his legs like limbo sticks. Kenny, you've got more peach pie on you than in you, said his grandmother. On Friday, he overslept and was late for school. Uh-oh, said Kenny as he tucked his shirt in. Late again, Kenny, said Miss Brown. I hope you won't be late for the class trip to the zoo next week. Oh, no, ma'am, he said. Nothing can make me miss that trip. I can't wait to see the Tigers. Shout out to the Detroit Tigers. Okay. On Saturday morning, Kenny and Ted walked to the Slauson Middle School grounds. Good luck, little brother, said Ted. Kenny and two boys from his school, Alonzo Peach and Mark White, stood before the French Dukes commander and vice commander. We'll be selecting one new member of the French Dukes today, just in time for the contest at Pioneer High School next week. The boys took their places. Kenny's two classmates wished him good luck, but Kenny just stared straight ahead. Then the commander called out the orders. Right, right, box, box. Kenny hit each of the drills. He marched with precise steps. His head snapped right and then left. After the routine, all three boys stood at attention. At ease, said the commander. Finally, it was time to reveal the name of the newest member of the French Dukes. Kenny rubbed his hands together. "Alonzo Peach, welcome to the French Dukes Precision Drill Team," said the commander. Kenny's mouth dropped open. Oops, there we go. Alonzo and Mac shook hands, but Kenny stomped over to a bench. The sound of the drills rang in his ears. Box, box, box. Ted sat on the bench next to Kenny. "So how come I'm not a French Duke yet?" asked Kenny. "I hit all the steps and I didn't make any mistakes." Ted nodded. "Well, you're right. That box was right on point, your turns were right, and the spins were even better than mine." But he said, "All week you've missed the mark." Kenny sighed. He drummed his fingers as he thought about the pitcher he'd broken, the sloppy clothes he'd worn, and he hadn't shaken Alonzo's hand. Then Kenny nodded. "I'll try again next month because French Dukes don't give up, they step up." Ted hugged Kenny's shoulders. "That's my man," he said, "and the Dukes will bring that trophy home from Pioneer High School on Monday." On Sunday, Kenny drew pictures of tigers. After dinner, Kenny carefully swept the kitchen floor. When he carried the garbage to the trash can, he ignored the boys pitching pennies. Just before bedtime, Kenny passed Ted's room. Ted's uniform was so well starched it could stand up by itself. His beret and gloves sat on the dresser. Kenny slipped his fingers into the gloves. He saluted himself in the mirror. "Step up, Private Kenny." The next morning, Kenny hummed as he buttoned his shirt. "Today is Zoo Trip Day." He reached for his backpack. Then he saw Ted's glove on the nightstand. Oh, no. Ted needs those gloves for the talent contest at Pioneer. He paced down the hall. "Mom and Dad are at work," he said. "I don't have money for the city bus or a taxi, and Pioneer High School is 24 blocks away." Kenny took a deep breath. The clock struck 8. He had 1 hour to get across the city. And we'll leave the story there. Thank you so much.
I'm going to not ruin it and move through really, really quick so you don't see the things that happen. Except that Sam's gets a very nice shout out, and I don't think they know yet, so we're excited about that. And lovely, our archives, I'm not sure if everyone knows that our library actually has an archives team, and we're very fortunate. And these are images from there. There's a lot of great information that's already on there, but we're really excited to bring this book into the world. And please stay tuned, because we will have a separate event so that we can see what's happening today and hear from some more of the French Dukes themselves. So thank you, Debbie, Chris, and the French Dukes. All right, so we are switching gears from picture books to our middle grade novel, which we are extremely excited about. Mimi Olson is here with her middle grade book, Middle School is No Place for Magic. And I think maybe you can tell from the book cover that we're not talking about Harry Potter-esque magic in this case. We're talking about tricks and carditions and all of those amazing things. I know you want to hear from Mimi. She's got an awesome tour planned with some actual magicians. So please give a warm welcome to Mimi Olson. She also made really amazing stickers and bookmarks, so make sure you get them.
Hi, I'm Mimi, and thank you so much for coming. I want to first thank Fifth Avenue Press. I would not have published this novel had it not been for them, and I've taken to calling them the altruistic press because they really just do this from love of books and love of authors, and it's amazing. So thank you, Erin, and everybody on the team. And I've been writing fiction for 20 years. This is my debut novel. Thank you to all my family and friends, especially my husband, Steve, who's been very supportive. So I'm going to read a little bit later, but first I wanted to just tell you a little bit about how this book came to be. About 10 years ago, 9-10 years ago, my husband and I took my daughter Leah to a magic show in Ypsi for Ypsi Fest. And there we saw this amazing magic show. And what struck me was the magician had his son, who was around 10, around my daughter's age, as his magician's assistant. And I just could not stop thinking about that as far as the story goes. I was thinking about what would that be like to have a dad as a magician? How cool would that be growing up? But then when you get into middle school, and knowing myself, I was very shy in middle school, and believe it or not, because now people say I don't stop talking, but I was shy, and everything was mortifying and embarrassing to me in middle school, so that was kind of the impetus for this novel. And so I did actually, for fun, if I could have a couple of volunteers, I brought a couple, oh, thank you. Thanks for stepping up. I brought a couple photos from that actual magic show that they can kind of show you. And there they are, the father-son magic. And these are the actual magicians that inspired me. This is my good friend Jeff Boyer and his son Caleb, who for years was his magician's assistant. And the funny thing about that is, about midway through the book, I thought I need to have a magician consult on the novel. I saw a random business card in a Panera Bread, called him up, and we were talking about the book and what inspired it, and he said, guess what, that was me and my son. And we are going to hopefully team up to do author talk / magic shows at some point here. So, thank you. So middle school's No Place for Magic is about a 13-year-old young man. Used Forsyth Middle School as sort of the setting, although it's called Barrington Middle School. It's set in Ann Arbor. I had a ton of fun doing a lot of research on magic and meeting people in the magic world here in Michigan. And I'm going to read a little bit from the first chapter, and I just want to set it up. So in the first chapter, Jay, the main character, is in a little bit of trouble, and he and his dad have been called down to the principal's office, and after he's reprimanded, and he apologizes for his mistake, the principal asks if they would actually perform their magic act at the Barrington Talent Show. And now we can hear what Jay thinks about that idea, because his dad said yes without consulting him. Dad blathers on about the talent show the whole drive home. How about we add in a few more call-outs, get more audience participation? I know we can do the spelling bee. We haven't pulled that one out in a while. I look over at him to see if he's joking. Nope, he's staring straight ahead at the road, completely serious. How can he think it's a good idea to ask an audience of middle schoolers to shout out words that we have to then incorporate into our tricks? Does he not know what kind of words kids my age love to say? Sometimes my dad can be so naive. Dad, please no, the kids don't want to participate in the magic show. Let's not have any audience participation. He looks at me and shrugs, chuckling. You're probably right about that one, he says. I ask if I can wear a mask during the talent show. Dad stops laughing. You know as well as I do that a big part of the act is facial expression, so I don't think adding a mask to our getup is a good idea. Well, do we have to wear the capes? I try for a small win. I will not be wearing the cape. Dad looks over at me like I asked him to swallow a bee. What's a magic act without a top hat, bow tie, and cape? That's always been our trademark look. Trying to get my dad to change anything in our act unless it's his idea is nearly impossible. That's why I'm burned out. It's the same costume, the same tricks, the same facial expressions over and over again. Ugh. I reach into my pocket and start turning the die in my hand. I run through a few different scenarios thinking about what could happen if we actually go through with it. Number one, the very best case scenario, Dad and I get through our magic show without becoming the laughingstock of Barrington Middle School. Number two, mediocre bad. I get a nickname out of the show that's even worse than my current nickname, which is Magic J. Number three, worst case. Something goes terribly wrong. My dad trips and steps on our bunny, can't find the crimp cards, the flash paper sets the stage on fire, Dad gets heckled flustered by the hecklers, and trust me, there will be heckling. Can you imagine performing a magic show with your dad in front of an auditorium full of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders? Thank you.
So I'm actually introducing an introducer. My colleague and one of the members of the Fifth Avenue Press team and my helper today wrangling everything, Sarah Peltier, is going to give an official introduction to our next author. So please welcome Sarah.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. So this one is A Crown in the Dark by A.J. Yang, and it's a young adult fantasy novel. It's action-packed, full of adventure. It's got the great characters and the complex world building you expect in a big, juicy fantasy novel. But I'm really excited for this one because our author, A.J. Yang, is the youngest author we've published to date. She submitted this manuscript to us when she was a freshman in high school, and we're so glad she took the chance and went out on a limb and did it because she's a very talented up-and-coming author. We're so happy she's here. And we can't wait to see what she does next. So let's hear it for A.J. Yang.
Hi, so I'm a junior in high school now. And yeah, I wasn't gonna read any from the book, but I will tell you a little bit about it. So, kind of starting from the beginning. I don't know if my mom knows this, but I wrote this book because we got in a fight one day and I was really, really mad at her. So if you're reading that, or when you're reading this, just keep that in mind. Yeah. I don't even remember what we were fighting about, but I do remember that afterwards I went in our garage and I sat at a bench next to our shoe rack and I kind of just dreamed up the story. A Crown in the Dark is about a princess named Katerina Winier with a dark history, but it all reaches kind of a tipping point when she, the world that they're in, when you ascend to the throne, you're kind of expected to have this magical power. But when it comes for her, her turn to do that, it turns out that she doesn't have a power, and that's kind of her biggest nightmare. And in the book, there are two worlds, a human world and a demon world. Katerina is from this human world, and the demon world is full of souls of humans who live kind of tormented lives with a lot of suffering. But the problem is the demon world is actually dying because of a lack of resources, and they realize that they need to completely invade the human world if they want to survive. But unbeknownst to Katerina, the Queen of Demons is actually watching her every move because she knows of Katerina's dark history, because when Katerina was a child, she killed a man. So, yeah. And this demon wants to harness this evil that she sees in Katerina to kind of help her in her quest of taking over the human world. Even though right off the bat, obviously Katerina is not a good person whatsoever, but she's actually, by far my favorite character because of her flaws. They're very human flaws, her fear of humiliation, her fear of being helpless, her fear of just letting people down. They're all very human fears, and I think they're ones that a lot of us can relate to. But the difference is that, she does a lot of bad things later on, and I don't think any of us would do some of these things. So, yeah. Shout out to my 8th grade English teacher. We had this assignment where we were supposed to submit a short story, and I didn't have time to do the assignment because I was writing this book. So I actually submitted a 500-page draft of the book for my assignment. Yeah. I don't think she read any of it, but she did leave a very nice comment, and I did get an A+ on the assignment, so yeah. Something I feel a lot of people ask me about this process is how I had time to do all of it. Number one, it was during the pandemic, so I wasn't going to school. I mean, I had online school, but not physical school, obviously. And I stayed up to 2 or 3 every night. The second thing was I really enjoyed doing it. If you really love doing something, you'll always make time for it in your day, naturally. And if you don't like it, you're just not going to be able to find time for it. And of course, there's a lot of people that I couldn't have done this without. I'd like to name a few people. First is Miss Gong. I don't know if she's here, but she was like the yeah. She was the Kumon director that like I did Kumon in elementary school, and she was kind of like the first person that made me realize I love reading and writing. The second person is Miss Baker. I'm also not sure if she's still here, but she was my writing tutor in middle school, and she was the one that told me about Fifth Ave Press. I had written the book without the intention of ever publishing it, but her support kind of led me to submit my manuscript. So yeah. Third, my parents, obviously. They're my biggest supporters. They take care of every little thing, and yeah. Oh, and also thank you to my mom for making me mad that one day, because I couldn't have done it without that. And finally, the team at Fifth Ave Press. Obviously, you guys are so amazing. Like all the dumb questions I asked, you guys answer those, and I'm just so grateful for everything you've done. One last thing, 75% of all the proceeds for this book will be going towards an organization called A Brighter Way, which is directed by a man named Adam Grant. I actually had the privilege of being able to interview this person for my podcast, which is called This Person I Met. You can check it out on Spotify. But he's just the most genuine person, and the organization basically helps formerly incarcerated people kind of readjust back to society. And he really does have the most amazing story, and he's the most genuine person ever. So you guys can check out that interview on Spotify, or you can just trust me when I say he's like the most amazing person ever. So yeah, I hope you guys really enjoy my book, and thank you so much for your attention.
I want to point out the illustrator for this cover was so excited. There is a map of Maya's world in this book, and the illustrator had never done a map before. So be sure to go through it, because it's also beautiful, and it has foil on the spine for the hardcover. So thank you. And Sarah Peltier was the one who worked so closely with AJ and family, and I apologize, I said your real name. We have a pseudonym. So anyway, I am now going to switch gears. We're moving on to adult nonfiction. And this is a book that has already had lots of appearances around town that we're really excited about. AJ's by far, the longest fiction novel that we've gotten. This is a gorgeous picture book. It's also the first combo that we have done with another publisher, so U of M Press. Helped bring this into the world as well with the printing, and it also was shortlisted for an award. So let's give a warm welcome to Frank Yulee with Cinema Ann Arbor.
Thank you all for coming. I have been very fortunate that Fifth Avenue Press took on this project. And I started working on it in 2016, and it just kind of gradually evolved into a big enough book that it needed to have full illustrations on every page, and the wonderful cover art, which was designed by Nate Poxy Morrison here at the Fifth Avenue Press. And I was very fortunate that the University of Michigan Press took the work that they did, and it was like a turnkey project. They went and printed it as a coffee table book. Anyhow, the book is about the history of the student film societies at the University of Michigan, which, if you're of a certain age and if you were in Ann Arbor, you probably remember going to Cinema Guild or the Ann Arbor Film Co-op. They really thrived in the 70s and 80s when there were no streaming services, no video stores, no VHS tapes. So you had to go see a movie in a theater of some sort. And we were very fortunate in Ann Arbor because the student film societies presented things like premieres of movies that were art house films that were only playing in places like New York or California. And we had this incredibly thriving film culture, and it led to like the Ann Arbor Film Festival, which was started in 1963 by an art professor. And then there was an 8mm film festival. There was film making going on around town, and there were just lots of things coming in. There were guests coming in. So anyhow, during the process of this book, I interviewed about 80 people, and a number of people that came through Ann Arbor that give it a lot of credit to their life in Ann Arbor include like Ken Burns, Lawrence Kasdan, my old housemate, a guy named John Sloss, who's produced films like Boyhood and Green Book. And those folks were very generous, and so I interviewed Ken Burns. He was had great memories of his time in Ann Arbor. So I'm just going to show a few pictures that were in the book. The book is a very big combination of images, and there's some amazing photos that I was able to get a hold of. A lot of them are from people's personal archives, but also the Bentley Historical Library and the Ann Arbor District Library, which has the archives of the Ann Arbor News. There's over 400 illustrations in the book. A lot of them are scanned from the original negatives, unpublished photos. Anyhow, this is the brief overview of the book. So there's about 15 chapters. The earliest films on campus were presented by this woman, Amy Loomis, who's completely unknown. When the Michigan League opened in 1929, she was the manager, and she decided to start showing art films. And the local movie theaters did not give a hoot about showing like German subtitled films and things. But she started showing them, and it became so popular that when she left campus a couple years later, a bunch of students started the Art Cinema League, which was possibly the first student film society in the United States. So Ann Arbor really was a pioneer in this, and because it was a pioneer, it grew exponentially to where in the 70s and 80s, I mean, Leonard Maltin wrote a book calling Ann Arbor one of the most cinematically saturated cities in the country. And there were few campuses in the entire United States that had as many films. The Art Cinema League evolved into what was called Cinema Guild in 1950, and the two gentlemen in this photo selling tickets are Ed Weber on the right and Hugh Cohen on the left, and they were both grad students when they joined Cinema Guild, and they started picking out experimental films and kind of cutting-edge content that wasn't going to get screened anywhere else, and they were always pushing the envelope, and Hugh Cohen there in the center in 1967 was one of 4 people arrested by the Ann Arbor police for showing what were termed obscene movies. And he's still teaching at the age of 93 on campus, by the way. But Hugh had an amazing scrapbook, so he loaned me his scrapbook, which had his own original mugshot and his fingerprint card and everything. But these were the kind of things that was happening in Ann Arbor, and again, just a few places in the country. So I had been a member of one of these student groups, so I wanted to document this. So the Ann Arbor Film Festival was started in 1963 by this professor of art, George Manupelli, who was sitting there with the cover model for the 1968 program. But he was an incredible kind of irascible character, and he would make his own movies, and he did the incredible graphics like that last image. Anyway, among the other things they did, they brought Andy Warhol and the Velvet Underground to perform on campus in 1966. And here's a photo, I got unpublished photos of this performance from one of the film people that had taken them. But this was the first performance of Andy Warhol's Uptight with Andy Warhol and the Velvet Underground outside of the East Coast. And the film festival, drove them in, and they all stayed in an RV parked on Cambridge and Lincoln Street. Anyhow, then there was an 8mm film festival, which was, you can see there's a little card there. They would have like an 8mm film, and they'd have like cassette tape, and it would say like start the film, start the soundtrack at this point, and they would play the soundtrack on a cassette. A lot of other campus things happened. There were filmmaking. So these people in 1951 made a movie of Kafka's Metamorphosis. And I found the director's son, and he had a whole basement. He had the original film print. He had all these promotional photos he loaned me. So again, the book is full of these illustrations and very high quality, thanks to the wonderful folks at Fifth Avenue Press. There were a whole bunch of other films made on campus. I've actually seen Metamorphosis. It's a little creaky by today's standards. But great photo, what can you say? But we also brought a lot of guests to campus. So this is Sam Fuller, the film director. This was the first retrospective of his films in the US, apparently. In 1970, he came to campus. That is the venue. Cinema Guild showed films in the Architecture Auditorium. You can see the rapt attention of the people in the audience listening to this sort of maverick filmmaker. Frank Capra came in 1973. The man in the background is Professor Marvin Fellheim, who helped found the film department. And Capra was at the time kind of a nobody, or not a nobody, but he was kind of dismissed because it was the Vietnam era and his films were seen as corny. But I talked to Neil Gabler, who's now a famous film critic. He and his roommate, Richard Glatzer, wanted to bring Capra to campus, and they brought him. And all these people thought it's going to be corny, and they were just blown away. Capra really won them over. Joan Rivers came and spoke in Auditorium of Angel Hall with a test screening of one of her films. Anyway, it all ended in the mid-'80s when you could go to a video store and get a VHS tape of these movies, and then, of course, a few years later, streaming and everything else. So that is the whole story of Cinema Ann Arbor. Thank you very much.
And just to make it clear, so this book was shortlisted for something called the Alice Award, and while it did not win, being shortlisted is a huge honor in itself and the company that it keeps. So if you haven't heard of that award, it's only been around for 10 years. So take a look, because it's definitely a testament to the graphic designers that we have on staff. Okay, we're finishing up this afternoon with a why. An Ypsilanti history story. John McCurdy could not be here, so it's actually going to be Bill Nichols. Is Bill Nichols? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to have Bill come up. This is actually a book, and he can talk about the process, but that was the product of a group of a committee, and so you can talk about how that came to fruition. But please give a warm welcome to Bill Nichols with Ypsilanti Histories, a look back at the last 50 years.
Thanks for the invitation, and particularly big thanks for Fifth Avenue Press, because if it wasn't for them, this probably wouldn't have happened. You start something, you don't realize the obstacles you have to go through, and if I guess I would have known the obstacles, I would have thought, hey, I don't know if I want to start this. It began 2 years ago, about right now, that in anticipation for Ypsilanti's bicentennial celebration, which is this year, back in 1923, a book was prepared to tell the first 100 years of Ypsilanti. 1973, there was sort of a revision and an update to that to bring our city's history in a written form in the sesquicentennial celebration. So we at the Ypsilanti Historical Society 2 years ago thought, hey, 2 years from now, we're celebrating bicentennial. A lot's happened in this town in the last 50 years. We really should tell the story of the events that happened that created the Ypsilanti that we know today. That started 2 years ago. It was myself and another member of the Ypsilanti Historical Society. John McCurdy from Eastern Michigan University history professor joined us. And if it wasn't for John, that was another thing that another part of the puzzle that helped this thing happen. And Sarah Zawicki from the Ypsilanti District Library joined us. And we would have been in trouble without Sarah joining us also. Well, how do you, in 2 years, write about 50 years of history? Well, you're not going to recruit somebody and say, hey, you know, I've got something you'd like to do, I'd like you to do. Why don't you write about the last 50 years of Ypsilanti's history for us and have it done in 2 years so we can have it published? Well, that wasn't going to happen. So the decision was made to recruit people who lived the experiences of the 50 years and write 2,000-word essays about their particular experiences, first-hand experiences. And fortunately, I've been around the town long enough that I knew most of the players that had been around and was able to recruit people who enthusiastically volunteered to become writers. And, you know, we weren't going to rewrite things that happened in the past. We were just going to focus principally on the last 50 years, and to some extent it really overlaps into parts of the last 100 years. Well, what evolved for us are chapters like, there was a time when we had an adult bookstore right on Michigan Avenue in downtown Ypsilanti. Ypsilanti was not going anywhere if that adult bookstore was going to stay there. So the city government took the initiative to get rid of that bookstore, which the result was the people involved were involved in criminal activities, and they had to keep from going to jail. They had to give their building and all their assets to the city of Ypsilanti. That was a story that needed to be told. We recruited the city manager to tell that story. We also were a town of 19th century architecture that was being somewhat abused from the growth of population associated with the bomber plant after World War II. And it led to the creation of our historic district in 1973, in the late 1970s. And the person who was one of two people who were instrumental in creating that was still around. She wrote that chapter. You may have heard about the Water Street project, redevelopment project in Ypsilanti, which still is an open project to be developed, but the mayor, who was mayor during that period, volunteered to write a 2,000-word chapter for that. All in all, we have some 40 chapters in the book of highlighting our local history for the last 50 years. It never occurred to me that you needed a layout person when we began this process. And it was Sarah Zwicky, who at the Ann Arbor District Library, who had the connection to Fifth Avenue Press and suggested that we do that. In retrospect, if it wasn't for Fifth Avenue Press, I'm not sure it would have actually happened. Funding for a project like this is somewhat difficult to come by. We were able to have funding from City of Ypsilanti, Eastern Michigan University, and Ypsilanti Historical Society. And that funding was enough for us to print the book, and probably we would not have the funding to do professional layout like Fifth Avenue Press offered us. For those of you wanting to do a project like this, I learned that when you go to a local print shop to publish a book like that, they'll say, sure, we'll do that. And what they do is they farm it out to another company, and that another company does the work, and the company that you went to makes most of the money. And so who is that company, or where is that company that print shops refer to do all the work and then bring the print shop the finished product to give to you and accept your money? It's a company in Tecumseh, I think, called Ziggy Pod, that when we first priced our local print shop, we didn't know if we could afford it. And then a local print shop owner who is retired now says, well, you don't have to go to them. You can go directly to the source. And directly to the source was about half the price. And that made it very affordable that we could print enough copies to last for the next 100 years. All the proceeds from the sale of the book go to support of Ypsilanti Historical Museum and Archives. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We are just so excited to have this event be part of the first A2 Community Book Festival. We are so excited. So we have a bunch of really great books that are already in the pipeline for next year. And so you're going to continue to see some books come out, and then we'll celebrate all of them a year from now. But please take a look at our website, too, if you haven't looked in a while, because it wasn't a website before. It was a landing page, and now it's real. So it actually showcases all of the talent and beauty of all the books that are out there. So thank you again to all the authors. Thank you for coming. You found
Yes,
stuff.
yeah,
Oh,
he's all set.
excellent.